Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there.
How dare you!
All guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want!
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion
is advised.
You talk about extreme.
What is happening and what is up? Hold out your glass, because we're about to fill it up.
Torches high.
Look at it from a different perspective.
Hey, what is happening? What is up? Hold out your glass, because we are about to fill it up. Welcome to the Prometheus Lens Podcast, the place where the conversations are always enlightening. I'm your host, Doc Brown, and here we like to use the allegory of the Prometheus Lens to take a second look at everything. Hey guys, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the hero's journey. Be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and flick that bell. That way you don't miss out on a single journey. And hey, while you're here, be sure to check out our social media channels down below at our various platforms. That would be much, much appreciated. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you consume content, let me say up front, I know ads suck, but this is your way to contribute to the podcast, and I greatly appreciate it. But for $4 a month, you can get this ad-free listening experience and bypass the ads, guys. But today, we got a returning guest. This man is one of those deep wells of knowledge. He's a guy that when you sit down, he will stretch your mind. Our first conversation, he definitely even stretched me. And I like to think that I'm Laffy Taffy. I've been stretched and can't be stretched hardly anymore. But this man stretched me, and I love sitting down and talking with him. So I'd like to welcome back to the show, Doug Elwell. So, man, thank you for coming back and talking to us again.
My first major book was, which I published originally with Defender Publishing with Tom Horn, was called Planet X, The Sign of the Son of Man at the End of the Age, which discusses how another planet in our solar system, theoretically called Planet X, comes in and out of our solar system every couple thousand years. I think it's roughly 2,000 years. It appears during major periods of human history when God comes back and renews the original covenant he created with mankind. When he first created Earth, and every 2,000 years or so, he comes back and visits to see how things are going, and Planet X is his heavenly sign, which precedes that return. And the last time it came back was at the Star of Bethlehem, which preceded his first coming as Jesus. And it'll return again probably in the near future as the sign of the Son of Man at the end of the age, as described in Matthew 24:30. And that will be the next time it appears. And it's appeared every couple thousand years. Around 2000 BC, 2,000 years prior to Christ, there was a heavenly sign that preceded the birth of Abraham. And also, the Sumerians had a record of seeing their god, what they called Enlil at that time. Their most high god, which was believed to be a star or a planet, appeared in the heavens around that time, didn't cause a cataclysm on Earth, actually led to the destruction of ancient Sumer. And so I talk about that in chapter 6 of my book on Planet X. So Job is actually basically the Hebrew creation epic, which mirrors that of the ancient Babylonians, also known as the Babylonian creation epic. And in that book, we go through how the Bible is a book of its time. It's in context with other ancient writings of its time, such as the nephesh. And when properly translated, let's say the creation material is properly translated in that context, it makes a lot more sense. And it also fits in with the Planet X hypothesis that we're dealing with now. And so the book on Planet X attempts to bridge the past with the future, which is soon, and kind of understand how this pattern has been repeating over many thousands of years. Now, this planet returns every 2,000 years or so to inaugurate a new covenant between God and men. And the next covenant will be coming up, which I'm calling the Covenant of the Star. That'll be coming up soon. You can learn more about that at planet-x.info.
And guys, if you had missed it, me and Doug had a conversation, a deep conversation, about an hour and a half or hour and 40 minutes or so on just this subject in his book alone. I'll be sure to drop a link somewhere in this little bubble. Just look around for it. It'll be a little black tag in one of these corners for a link to take you to that episode and check that out if that interests you. That was a mind-blowing conversation.
Now it's a precursor to the technologies. Now, technologies are essentially total mastery of electricity. They understand what the nephesh is and what electricity is, and now Satan has control of that. He's the master of that. You can understand what technologies are. And technologies are Satan, when he first ruled, he might have ruled in the world before the earth. In fact, the earth prior to the current creation may have been ruled over by powerful demons. It once orbited where the asteroid belt is now, and in the process of destroying that empire that Satan was trying to create on the primordial earth, he ended up destroying Earth itself and creating a significantly different planet, which he then moved closer to the sun, where it is today. And so Satan remains buried underneath the earth that he intended to rule. But during that time, he probably created primitive creatures and man-like beings. And he possessed those beings, like he would later possess Cain, and created very high technologies that they could use to rule over Earth. And one of these, the most important one, is a technology called the Tzohar stone. And now the technology of the Tzohar stone is basically what we call an optical hard drive. I could tell you about the backstory. That I don't know how much more time we have, but basically the Ark of the Covenant is the same technology, and all electrical in nature. The Ark of the Covenant was actually what's called a capacitor, and the capacitor is basically any capacitor is like two layers of conductive material sandwiching a layer of non-conductive material. Over time, either side of the conductive material, one will give positive, one will go negative electricity, kind of opposing each other. And the Ark of the Covenant the box was actually designed that way. The inner box and the outer box theoretically were separated. And how it was set up was that over time they accumulated electrical charge, one positive, one negative. And one of the, probably the inner box was attached to one of the cherubim, and the outer box was attached to one of the cherubim. And what the high priest did when he sprinkled blood on the top of the Ark of the Covenant, he bridged the gap between the inner and outer box, allowing electricity to flow between them. And that was basically like switching on the system. But what happened was that the Tzohar stone, which was basically an optical hard drive made of sapphire. I'm just telling you why. I'll tell you what. We can talk about why later if you're interested. That would start the disk spinning. There were lasers in the cherubim which could read and write to the disk. And it actually would allow not only data retrieval for questions you might have, like a computer. It would also set up a communication link between God and himself. There's the heavenly ark, and heaven operates in the same way. And so the two stones are linked together, probably subatomically, so you can have real-time communication. And then the priest, and before him Moses, could actually speak to God face-to-face between the cherubim. That's what they're talking about. There was this optical hard drive, sapphire, which was not only could also have information written inside of it using a laser. With the technology which exists right now, we have this technology. We actually have sapphire hard drives we can write to and read from using lasers. So I was confident this was the answer. And it could also, by using the surface of the stone, you could actually use these lasers to write image to the top, so you can actually see each other and talk to each other in two-way communication, which was highly secure. And so that was the purpose of that. Basically, every year the high priest was meeting with God and talking to him, saying, "This is what happened this year." God is saying to him, "Okay, I want you to do this, this, and this." That'll be their annual meeting kind of situation. He gives them their marching orders for the year. And then as soon as the electrical charge from the inner and outer boxes wears down, the ark shuts down. And then that's the end of the conversation, which may be like 15 minutes, depending on, how much energy the ark drew upon to function properly. Part of the reason, not only is the ark designed to be a capacitor, whether or not you think it's a machine, the inner and outer box would accumulate charge over time because they're separated by wood, in case you would. And so either it was accidental chance they did it that way or it was purposeful. I think it was purposeful. One of the reasons was if you look at the construction of the tabernacle of the wilderness, it's got the roof is comprised of several different layers of like fiber and shaped lamb skin or sheep's wool, and also seal skin. And the whole thing is connected by a network of silver wire. It's very strange. I mean, why are you doing this? Most of the wire is hidden. So it's not ornamental in nature. It's like a grid work that goes up to the ceiling and to the ground. It's also grounded in the ground. And in fact, the entire outer perimeter is grounded and tied up with this silver wire too. And so what's happening here, whether or not you believe it is technological in nature, that is creating an electromagnetic field because those skins on the top that's forming the roof, when that wool rubs up against that seal skin, that's going to create a powerful static charge that will send electricity through that grid and create an electromagnetic field around the ark, which will cause it to absorb that energy over time. So not only is the tabernacle a protective place, it's actually a charging station for the ark, literally.
Wow.
That's what it's probably for. And so you have the capacitor construction, which would absorb any electrical fields around it. You have a grid work of a grid work around the ark, the Holy of Holies, which would do exactly that. And you have the desert wind, the dry desert wind, causing the wool and the seal skin to rub against each other, causing that charge, explaining why the wiring was attached to the roof and why would you have any of this? And it sounds like it's a Faraday cage, basically, which it also was. So it's protecting the ark from outside interference, plus it's protecting people outside of the ark from being hurt by the ark's electrical field, which may have been very powerful.
With the price of eggs and bread slowly approaching a day's wages, it's more important than ever to secure the value of your dollar. One thing that has remained steady is gold and silver throughout the ages. Back in Roman times, a piece of gold would get you a toga. That's the equivalent of $3,000 today. That still remains true to this day. For a full suit, shoes, tie, you're looking at about $3,000. Because gold and silver holds its value. So if you're tired of watching the value of your dollar go down every single day, it's time to get off your hands and make a move. I've recently teamed with Cornerstone Asset and Metals. Reach out to those guys for all of your financial needs. It's time to trade in that forever devaluing dollar into hard assets that you can hold, like gold and silver. Be sure and check the link down in the description or the number on the screen. And hey, tell them Doc Brown sent you. Are you a hunter, a hiker, or just an outdoor enthusiast? Well, if you are, you know that good quality gear is hard to come by. And finding all-American made is like finding Bigfoot in the woods. Hence the name of Squatch Survival Gear. Head on over to squatchsurvivalgear.com. Use the code PLP10 for 10% off store-wide. Yeah, and that's something I say too to a lot of people because, in these circles that I run in, there's a lot of people that are, Paul called them, the Judaizers. And, yeah, they kind of go by the names of the sacred name people now, or the Hebrew roots movement, or some people call themselves, Torah followers, and they're Gentiles, they're pale skinned, blue eyed, blonde haired, but they practice the laws of Moses and the Jews. And I'm just like, you guys complicate, like you said, you add the leaven and complicate things, and you're putting this huge stumbling block and barrier between you and God, and that's why Jesus died on the cross, man. And the story of salvation and how to return back to the Father and become one with the Father, because Jesus said, I and the Father are one. He died on that cross so we could be the same. And it's like, I think that's a huge deception from Satan himself to put us back in the chains, because even Paul and a lot of those guys called the law a curse. And it's like, the story of salvation is so simple that a child could understand it, but some people just muddy the water and make it so complicated when it's such a simple concept.
It is very simple. Satan makes it overly complicated, like you said, because that's how he entraps you and entangles you in his web of lies. And so, that gets back to Oz's own semiotics and the whole worldly thing they tried to create that was separate from God. You can have a degree of freedom, but there's a lot of rules you have to follow. So, and, that's been, we spend much of our lives working, paying taxes, trying to live in the system. And when we would have much freer if we just stayed in the garden, did what God said.
Yeah. It's all a distraction.
The rules that Satan has imposed are much more burdensome. And so, with the giants of technologies, I want to get back to another point you made, related to that, is that Satan was the original high priest, as you recall. I think it was in Ezekiel that said that. And he had a breastplate of 9 instead of 12. I'm not sure what that meant, but it was interesting. And he would add an ephod-like device and all these similar things. But, and what it sounds like is that he actually had an Ark of the Covenant device also, possibly the Tzohar, which we'll talk about. And the Tzohar was actually, it's kind of a portable device, like the Ark, but smaller, but with a larger, crystal. Instead of 2 sapphire stones, it's one large one, about 1 cubit on diameter, which is about the length of your elbow to the tip of your finger. Very large disc. It probably holds huge amounts of information. This actually shows up as the lapis exilis, and I think it was a Gnostic tale where it was a huge stone in Satan's crown. When he and Michael were battling for control over heaven, Michael defeated him by knocking the stone out of his crown, and it fell to earth, where it remains today as the lapis exilis. And that is the main reason the giants were created, was to find and take control of that stone, which was a very powerful technological device, and also had a great store of knowledge inside of it. And so my theory is that, like the Ark of the Covenant stones, the Tzohar was the original sort of Ark of the Covenant type device, except instead of having a box, it was actually stood on top of an iron rod, which was its stand. And there's a lot of wordplay around that. So the implication is that it was actually in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, but it's never directly stated, but it's implied. If you understand what it is and how it works, then you can understand why they hid it, because it's so very dangerous. But the Tzohar stone was originally the crown of Satan and one of the sources of his power and knowledge. And it was, according to the Gnostic tradition, whether or not that was true or not, I'm not sure. But it's an interesting idea, and it makes sense because in Eden, there was many trees, including the tree of life, the tree of knowledge. And that would seem like there's this nice forest of trees with apples and things, but that's not how the ancient Near Easterners would have seen that.
Yeah,
and
it's angelic beings.
Yeah, it's angelic beings, but there were angels there, certainly. But the actual trees, according to the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was probably the most popular fictional story or semi-fictional story in the ancient Near East, it was actually symbolic. The Garden of Eden was underground, and it was filled with trees that were made up of jewels, of stones, like precious stones. And this also matches the description in Ezekiel, I think it's 28, I keep forgetting, where the Eden is also seen as on a mountain and possibly underground.
And Satan is described as the most beautiful tree amongst his brothers, and the angelic beings are compared to as trees. But I got a guy coming on talking about the rod of Moses, or some, people, look at it, call it the rod of Yahweh. But you had mentioned that, and you said maybe we had touched that. What's your thoughts, and what have you found concerning that rod?
Also a very important object. It's been around since the beginning, probably was owned by Satan before he was composed. The rod of iron, it's called the rod of iron. And it's basically a rod which is a very powerful electromagnetic fields device. It also has a lot of knowledge. It was probably given to Moses by Jethro. And that's the rod he took with him. That is the rod of Moses. Passed down from Adam all the way through the patriarchs, all the way down to Jethro, who received it as one of the gifts he received from his father Abraham, before he was sent to Serapis al-Qadim to manage the temple of El Shaddai there. And once they've been defeated by the Egyptians in that area, have been taken over. I personally think that the Mount Sinai is or is near the twin peak mountain called Serapis al-Qadim. Right nearby are 2 different mountains, one called Jebel of Sinai, another one called Jebel al-Rabi, which literally means in Arabic, Mount Sinai and Mount Horeb. And so there's a chain of mountains in like west central Sinai Peninsula, one's called Jebel Sinai, Jebel Horabi, and another one called Serbal al-Qadim, which is in between the two. And I think those two are the mountains where the prophets of old, Moses, Elijah, and also Jesus went to visit to be with God and get direction from him. In either case, the rod of iron was one of the original artifacts of a group of 13, I think there were, that had been scattered by the descendants of Seth, because they found that whoever had all of them together was too powerful and had to be prevented from that happening again. A lot of the stuff we're doing today, all these conquests we're doing throughout the Middle East and other areas of the world, we're finding, the main reason is to find these artifacts and reassemble them so the Antichrist can wear them all and rule the world through them. But the rod of iron specifically is a very powerful electromagnetic device that is so powerful that it can actually be used to change the weather. Basically how it works is that if it's inserted into the ground and is upright, it enhances the flow of electrons up and down between sky and ground so much it could actually enhance rainfall and stabilize the weather in the entire region. But if it's turned on its side, it'll disrupt the flow and prevent rain from happening. And that's what Elijah used to stop the rain. He used the iron rod. He put it on its side somewhere, probably in the ground, and left it there for several years and said, okay, came back and said, okay, are you going to obey God or not? The rod that God gave him, probably when he visited him down at Mount Horeb, because he actually went down to Mount Horeb to visit with God, and God probably gave him the Tzohar helmet, the Tzohar crown, the rod of iron, and probably all the rest of the kit. And there's a lot of information there too I'll be getting into in the future. By turning outside, you can actually stop the flow of electrons using this powerful electrical device and prevent rain from happening. That's why I wanted to get into Azazel and the matching of the electron stuff.
Hey, what is happening, my dirty fingernail theologian? If you enjoyed that highlight reel, be sure and check the link down in the description for the Apple and Spotify, and there you can find the full discussion. That is so tasty, it'll make your tongue slap the back of your brains out, Daddy. Torch is high.